We had Dr. Lee Cowden in a while ago to do some Zoom calls with us. He's very busy, cardiologist, stays very, very busy. And I wanted to take 10 minutes or so and just kind of introduce those of you who don't know Dr. Cowden to you. He's involved with several organizations. The work he is doing is amazing. Dr. Cowden, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Doug, for having me on.
Love to highlight you. Dr. Randy Nadeau, who you know we highlighted, and several other doctors on this show. Want to take a few minutes and discuss with you, when does a cardiologist doing open heart surgery and everything you did in operating rooms, emergency rooms, and so forth, when did the transition take place from that to where you're looking at supplements and diet and energy medicine and so forth? What happened? What so good happened to you?
Yeah, well, thank goodness that happened to me in the first few months of medical school. I'd lived in arid West Texas and moved to Houston to go to medical school. Wasn't used to the humidity and the grass and the mold and the trees and the weeds and everything else that was in the air. And I developed allergic rhinitis and then allergic sinusitis, then infective sinusitis, then bronchitis, and then pneumonia. And I went to the head of 3 different medical school departments, got their advice, followed their instructions, took their drugs, and got worse. And thank goodness my wife's grandmother came to visit us. She was a school teacher and self-taught nutritionist. She took me to the health food store, got me on some vitamins, minerals, and herbs, and I got well in about a month. And I thought, oh my goodness, I need to learn what this woman knows, and I need to take with a grain of salt everything I learned in the training institution after this.
You know, Ruth came to see you years ago. We totally put our faith and trust in you, and you helped her so much. Uh, and she said while she was sitting in that waiting room, remember that huge building you were in? While she was sitting in the waiting room, she saw hundreds of patients. I don't know how many employees you had, but they were clamoring to Dr. Lee Cowden. And it must have caught up with you. I couldn't do that. As you know, I worked at one of the big hospitals out here in clinical nutrition, and I only saw maybe 10 to 12, 15 of the doctor's patients a day, and it caught up with me driving home. Ruth said you were seeing 40 or 50 or 60 people a day, and often at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And you were using at that time nutritional modalities, and they were flocking to you. What did you learn from all of that?
Well, yeah, I learned that you need to treat the patient as an individual and not as a number like the allopathic medical system does usually. Uh, you know, if you talk with the patient and get to know them as a person and get to know from that what is likely the underlying causes of the disease and address the causes, then oftentimes the disease process will just go away. Instead of giving a pharmaceutical drug that covers up the symptom, you identify the causes.
Know the cause.
Know the
It's
cause.
amazing I came out with that name. We're seeing something right now that I need to discuss with you, and that is 10 million new unvaccinated, probably a lot of unhealthy individuals just flocking into America. And on one of the medical websites, I noted the other day shaking its finger at American parents because, boy, they see a plague coming with all of these infectious diseases because they're just not vaccinating their children. Can I get your take on that? You know, we've gone through polio and mumps and measles, rubella, all of that. Then along came these vaccines. I'm concerned with all of these newbies coming into our country, probably good people, that we're going to see an explosion, and it's going to be blamed on nasty mom and dad who didn't vaccinate their children. Your thoughts on that?
Well, yes, we probably will see some infectious illnesses cropping up in this country that we haven't had before because of that exposure to some of those microbes that are coming in as hitchhikers on the people that come through our southern border. But you know what people need to understand is that uh, there are other ways to address the problem and prevent the illness rather than vaccines. Uh, Homeoprophylaxis has been around since 1790. Was actually developed by Dr. Hahnemann, who also developed homeopathy in 1790. And so it's been around as long as vaccines. I have 5,000 peer-reviewed references from the literature on the benefits and safety of homeoprophylaxis and homeopathy in my computer. And so there's no paucity of research proving its effectiveness. One of my good friends from Australia, Isaac Golden, published an article in 2019 in a peer-reviewed journal where he analyzed 91 million patients who had been treated for 250 million patient years, almost 3 years per patient, for 8 potentially fatal infectious illnesses, and the effectiveness of that homeoprophylaxis in that group of 91 million patients was 90%.
Oh.
And the adverse event rate was 2%. There were no hospitalizations, no deaths, and only mild symptoms that lasted 2 or 3 days usually. Very rarely even a visit to the doctor.
Mm.
So we know that homeoprophylaxis works extremely well for infectious illnesses. Dr. Golden did his PhD looking at homeoprophylaxis for prevention of childhood illnesses and found that the children had better outcome from homeoprophylaxis than from regular vaccines for preventing childhood illnesses. And he also found that the incidence of chronic infections of other types after that was lower by 2 to 3-fold. Lower incidence of autism, lower incidence of other neurodevelopmental disorders, GI disorders, ear infections and throat infections were lower in that group that used the homeoprophylaxis.
You're saying homeo prophylaxis, as in homeopathy. This is a needle used? Is something injected into these children? How do they take homeoprophylaxis?
Oh, it's really complicated. You put some energies into a bottle of water and alcohol and take some drops in the mouth.
Yeah, that's such good news. Can I ask you before I let you go? We have so many people wondering about ALS and MS, myelin sheath diseases, and I understand you're involved with healingals.org. And 100, this is unreal. When I read this, Lee, I couldn't believe it. 100 very sick people have been relieved of some of their misery by going through a program that this organization, healingals.org, does. Teach me a little about that.
Yes, well, some of these patients that have recovered from ALS did it on their own just by reading and studying, really digging into all the causes of ALS and systematically reversing each of the causes. And in each ALS patient, there's usually at least a dozen causes, but it's a different dozen in each patient. So you have to, do specific individual evaluation to figure that out. Usually toxins, usually nutritional deficiencies, usually microbes in the body, very often mold or fungus in the air that they're breathing, and so on. So if you don't look for those causes and resolve those causes, then those causes continue the illness down the path toward disability and death.
I have a friend who had or has MS, and they've gone to now 3 neurologists, and they hear each time, I can make your life more comfortable, but you got 3 to 4 years to live. Is that modern medicine? Is that still what they're hearing?
Well, it's pretty sad that neurologists tell patients that MS and ALS is not reversible because we have very good proof that both are very, very reversible conditions. And I call that a word curse when a neurologist says to a patient, "This can't be reversed."
Yeah.
And so patients need to get those words out of their head and start looking for the answers. If people haven't watched the movie Lorenzo's Oil, they should, because those principles that are in the movie Lorenzo's Oil also apply to MS and ALS.
Yeah, just a wealth of information. I wish. Oh, quickly, EMFs, electromagnetic fields. My cell phone, my Wi-Fi, these towers they're placing all over America. To be concerned or not to be concerned?
EMF is a huge problem. It's my belief that a patient with chronic disease will not be able to get fully well as long as they are continued to being exposed to electropollution, especially during the night. So I believe that patients should be sleeping inside of a EMF shielded Faraday cage over their bed during the night, and turn off the breakers, the electric breakers that go to their bedroom area every night before they get into bed. And if they do that, they'll be able to have normal delta wave sleep, normal REM sleep, rapid eye movement dream sleep, and normal shift from sympathetic or fight or flight status into parasympathetic, which is the healing status that the body needs to be able to heal.
And they sell these Faraday cages large enough to
Yeah,
tent yourself?
yeah. The best one that I found is on safelivingtechnologies.com, and it's not cheap. You know, a really good Faraday cage may be between $1,500 and $2,000.
Mhm.
To be able to sleep inside of that and shield yourself from the cordless phones from your neighbors, the Wi-Fi signal from your neighbors, the radio frequency burglar alarm system from your neighbors, the cell phone tower down the street, etc.
Thank you. And finally, my friend with MS has been recently told, and I told them that I'd ask you this, that they have to take their amalgam out. Your thoughts on that? Their dental amalgams.
Well, the dental mercury amalgams, as they're sometimes referred to, are about 50% mercury, 20% silver, and a variety of other metals. And every time you chew, you release that mercury from the surface of the filling in the tooth into the saliva that you swallow and into the air that you breathe. And mercury is one of the most toxic substances on the planet, other than radioactive materials. And the mercury that gets into the saliva and gets swallowed into the gut, gets acted upon by bacteria in the gut, gets converted to methyl mercury, and gets absorbed through the blood-brain barrier into the brain. And inside the brain, the methyl group gets cleaved off, and the mercury poisons the brain.
Yes. Your
Get
answer is yes.
get
Seriously.
get it out. Get it out as soon as you can.
Especially mercury's neurotoxic, right? These are neurotoxic diseases, so it makes perfect sense. Brilliant as always, Dr. Cowden. Thank you for your time today. And by the way, folks, we want to bring you more of Dr. Cowden. He is semi-local out here in the South and brings us a wealth of information every time he's on. God bless you, Lee. Thanks for being here.
God bless you, Doug.
Thank you.